shift. So I want to shift specifically to why, particularly men, what are some signs if you're a man or if the man you're in love with or raising or whatever it may be, what are some signs that they may be experiencing arrested development? So we already talked about the childhood trauma, the narcissistic parents or neglectful parents might have a mental health condition. You find kids who have extreme illnesses in childhood, whether it be cancer or some type of physical disability, emotionally get stuck or being under extreme stress. One of the issues, I say this to you ladies, when you're considering taking a mate or you're considering choosing a husband, whatever it may be, one of the first things you probably should do is see what's their relationship like with their mom, with their mother. A lot of men who experience arrested development or their emotions are stunted have mom issues. Not daddy issues. They might have mom issues. Mom might be emotionally immature. They might be highly dependent upon their mom, right? You see a very unhealthy and sometimes unhealthy attachment with mom in the sense that you can't tell if that's mom or boyfriend or mom or girlfriend. So one of the first signs, if your man is experiencing arrested development, is if they got mom issues. When we talk about somebody that can't take instructions, that gets angry, that gets emotionally irritable at direction, or even when given ideas, who can't seem to take criticism and become overly emotional, they might have some mom issues. Here's another thing: men are generally more logical than emotional. If your man operates from a place of emotions, he probably has mom issues and his emotions are stunted. Here's another one, which I find interesting, is your man needs more reassurance than you. What I mean by reassurance, he needs reassurance that you want him, that you admire him. You know, if you go a day or two without complimenting him, he feels insecure. He has to keep an eye on you. Most likely he got some mom issues. Here's the thing. When we talk about somebody who's emotionally stunted, emotionally, and this man has mom issues, oftentimes he's looking for you to be a surrogate mom. They're looking for someone to take her place. So you find yourself in a relationship and wondering why he won't step it up and wondering why he won't take responsibility or take the lead in the relationship, because the reality is he's looking for mom. Interesting, right? So let's go on to a couple more signs of if your man is emotionally stunted or experiencing arrested development. So check this out. This type of person takes very little responsibility, and in fact, they avoid responsibility and is quick to blame everyone else for their problems. It's either always the boss, it's the coworkers, it's your fault, it's somebody else's fault. They never squarely take responsibility for their lives or their actions. It's always something outside of me made me do it. And whatever stage of life that they're in, they never take accountability, and it's always someone else's or something else's fault. Also, this type of person avoids responsibility. What I mean by avoid responsibility, here's something you might see. So sometimes people say, are you scared of success? Are you scared of failure? Or whatever it may be. These type of people set themselves up to be as irresponsible as possible. Won't look at their mistakes, will avoid situations that requires responsibility. He doesn't want to be held accountable, and in fact, will have a grown man tantrum if held accountable. Here's the next one. If your man is experiencing what we call arrested development or their emotions are stunted, his life goals, and this is interesting because I ask this question all the time to men in therapy, but their life goals are shallow and short sighted. What do I mean by that? Well, most of us as men, we're driven by success or a sense of success, and we set goals for ourselves, and most of us want to progress, you know, all the time at some point. But someone who is experiencing arrested development, their life goals, not just short term goals, their life goals are shallow and short sighted. And here's what that looks like. And I don't care what profession a person may be or what personal goals they may have, but their goals are so, well, we call them shallow or short sighted, which means there's no insight to them. The goals are, we call it having that low hanging fruit. We go after the low hanging fruit because I don't want to exert myself. I don't want to challenge myself. I don't believe in myself. So therefore, the things that I set for myself are minimal. Here's a reality, ladies or people. Most men hit their financial stride in their 40s. I want to say mid to late 40s, somewhere around there. So a person who goals are short-sighted, if they're still behaving this way by the age of 39, 40, it's going to take something catastrophic to get them out of this pattern. These are the type of people that dream and have these schemes with no plan in place. Their retirement plan is hitting the lotto. They want nice things, but don't have the resiliency or the tenacity to go after them. Here's another thing. When we talk about is the person I'm with, emotions are stunted and or arrested development. When you're making plans together, their plans are more about me than we. And these are short-term plans and long-term plans. Here's a clear sign of that. And what you see is, and what I see as a therapist, is men like this are only happy if we go with their plan If you go with their plan, and ultimately they're the only ones that's seen as successful or achieves that goal or fulfills that plan, and they don't necessarily care how you end up when it comes to that. His goal matters more than the collective. Interesting, right? So when he's making plans, whether short term or long term, it's more about how I'm affected. I care more about me than I care about the we. Interesting, right? Here's another one. Probably one of the biggest ones, especially for women. Even when you guys are together, you feel lonely. Here's the reason why. Because everything has to be about him. There's not a connection because he is sucking up all of the emotional energy out of the relationship. Another sign is constantly complaining about life. Well, here's the thing, winners don't complain. Winners don't, we call it belly aching. Whatever happens in life, it's a part of it, we deal with it. But a person whose emotions are stunted always have a complaint. It's always somebody else's fault. It's always, even when things are going right, they find the negative in it because they're constantly have a complaint. Here's another one. Here's another big one. He's not there for you even when he's there for you. What do I mean by that? Well, sometimes he don't follow through on promises. He makes things your fault. The other thing is when he's not there for you, even when he's there for you, he's only there for you when it benefits him. Think about that. So what happens is we begin to feel lonely. We begin to feel shut out of these relationships. And even in the times that you're asking for him to show up, he may show up with attitude. He may show up just to sabotage, to so he has something to complain about. And then you realize you're probably better off if he didn't show up at all. Here's another thing. He shuts you out even when he's stressed. So when he's stressed, basically he shuts down and pouts. Interesting, right? So when we talk about someone who's experiencing this arrested development, the reason being is we can say now it's related to trauma, it's related to all of these things that cause this. And we see this a lot, particularly with, yet again, black men, because of, frankly, the plight of things that black men go through. Anywhere from poverty, single parent homes, incarceration, disappointment, emotional neglect, and so forth. Here's a few more signs. He doesn't like compromises. Yet again, he only feels good when he wins. The thing is, he's fearful that if he compromises, for one, he's going to have to do it again. but also fearful of compromising because he only wins when he wins. He only feels good when he wins. And then sometimes it feels like he's going to compromise, but on the back end, here comes resentment, here comes some form of punishment, and then next thing you know, he becomes resistant. Here's a clear one. He makes everything about him. No matter what is going on in his life, he finds a way to make it about him. Some way, somehow, everything circles back to him. Wants to dominate conversations. Anything you're talking about, you could be having a good day. You do something that has nothing to do with him, but he's going to make it about him. The last one, this is where the resentment comes in at, holds grudges. Well, what do you mean? Bears grudges against any and everyone who he feels has come across him. And you get these petty overreactions. You get these, I call them grown man tantrums. Becomes a man baby. And everybody becomes an enemy. Everybody becomes a threat. And then begin to carry this anger, begin to carry these things for months and months and months.